Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Journey to Purpose. With me this week, I have the fabulous Rachel Pierre. She is a French conversationalist coach, former JP Morgan Chase leader and Apple leader, and now transitioning into her coaching and Fluency business. Rachel, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Me too. First, very easy question is, where in the world are you?
I am located in Austin, Texas. Just moved here from New York City. Spent
Oh,
20
that's
years in New
quite
York, and now I'm in Austin for about a year.
it's quite a jump in climate and in lifestyle, I imagine.
Yes, it is. I just got tired of the cold weather. I get to wear shorts on Christmas now, which is amazing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I respect that completely. I completely understand that. So well done, you.
Thank you.
So I want to talk about, obviously who you are and how you got to what you're doing now. And you have had quite a wonderful corporate career with JP Morgan Chase, with
Thank you.
Apple, looking at complex digital programs, governance, big programmatic stuff.
Yeah.
And then this shift to French conversation. What
Yeah.
got you there? That's quite the journey in itself.
Yes, it is. My love for French, in a nutshell, is really what got me there. But, just to give you the story behind it, I grew up speaking only French, and my dad made sure that nobody spoke to me in any other language than French because he wanted to make sure I had that solid foundation. And so when, in my late teens, he started, telling me that he was going to send me to the US for my studies. And I said, it doesn't make sense for me to learn a language that uses French so heavily and then deforms the pronunciation. Like, I don't want to go to the States. Can you just please send me to the US, France? And, we argued for a few years. And at some point, when he realized he wasn't going to win the argument, and, just to give you some context, my dad was actually the district attorney. So it was quite humorous to watch him be out argued by his daughter. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I thought, yes, he's going to send me to France. I won't have to learn this language. But then one day, the year before I came to the state, one day I go home from school and I turn on the TV, excited to catch up on my favorite TV show. And everything's in English. And I was like, what is happening? Dad, something's wrong with the TV. And he's like, nothing's wrong. I just changed, the subscription. So now you have no choice but to learn English. Oh man, I was so devastated, but it worked. It was like baptism by fire. Suddenly I had books in English, audiobooks in English, cassettes, little cassettes back then, in English. And it was British English too. So it wasn't even American English yet, but it
It's
made
the
it a
better
smoother
English,
transition.
obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. And it made it so easier for me because a lot of words are spelled, just like in French. Like, for example, center is spelled
Yeah.
centre, which is French,
Yeah.
And so fast forward a year later, I'm in the US and, people ask me, oh, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Haiti, and they're like, oh, do they speak English in Haiti? I'm like, no, they don't. I literally just learned it last year. And they're like, what? You don't sound like it. You don't even have a strong accent. I mean, that's amazing. And then, when I started in corporate America, leaders would actually call me to have conversations with, let's say, if the QA team or if a client was in France and there was, somebody was out sick. Let's say the French QA person was out sick or they needed a translator because the partner or the client didn't speak, fluent English. And so they will call me. Right. But then so I spent quite a bit in corporate America and, JP Morgan Chase. I was so burnt out. I took a year off just to travel and take a break. And, I did some ballroom dancing. That was a total accident. I just walked into a dance.
Super cool.
Thank you. I just walked into a ballroom dance school one day. I said, I just want to take a lesson. And then next thing you know, 2 months later, I'm in a dance competition and I won first place in, rhythm section. It was completely unexpected. And I was like, oh my God, this was meant to be. I'm so glad I took this year off. And then I went to France and it felt so good conversing with, in French for a few weeks. And one day I was sitting on a patio with locals, we're chatting, and they're like, Rachel, you told us you're from New York, but we don't believe you because your French, yeah. They said, your French is honestly better than most Parisians. Like your French is better than, any of ours. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. I mean so much because, I haven't been able to practice it in years. And they're like, no, but you're not from New York. And then I said, well, okay, fine. Or I'm originally from Haiti. And they were like, okay, thank God. Because we started feeling so bad. We're like, this American speaks French better than. And then this guy walks up to me. Turns out he was this billionaire that I never heard of. And he's like, I overheard your conversation and I'm having difficulty with the French language. I'm actually trying to expand my business. I have a negotiation coming up and I would love to do it in French. Would you be open to coaching me? And I was like, oh my God. Yes, of course. And so the same way that my dad just dropped me into this world of English, this shocking, world of English to force me to learn the language in a short amount of time, I applied the same method. I created a French world around him. I said, change your settings, your phone settings to French, your laptop settings to French. It doesn't matter whether you understand or not. If you don't understand, just Google, but do not switch them back to English. I want you to listen to the news in French. So I give him a couple of suggestions on channels. So I created this French world around him. And then sure enough, in 90 days, he was able to close his deal and handle it in French without using his
Wonderful.
translator. And I said, there's something there. There's
Mm.
something there. And sure enough, the more I spoke about it, the more I promoted it, I realized that there was actually, a huge need for it out there. And you know what? I decided perhaps it's time for me to exit corporate because the corporate life, the 9 to 5, it became very demotivating to me. I didn't feel fulfilled. And people have been telling me for years, why are you in corporate? You look like an entrepreneur. You look like a boss. Like you have no business being in this role. Your talent is just wasting away. And so I decided to listen to my gut and listen to that voice. And yeah, that's how I became an executive French coach.
I mean, I love that. It's all amazing. I don't think you know this. I've got a degree in languages as well. My first degree was Russian, and I did Russian history and some Spanish. And
Yeah.
the reason I bring it up, so the way it was like a 0 to degree in 4 years. And after 2 years, we went to live abroad. We lived in Russia, and I lived in a place called Krasnoyarsk in Siberia. Now, in theory, by the time I got to Russia, I ought to be able to talk about ecological problems and women's rights and all these topical stuff. But honestly, I got there and I couldn't ask for a cup of tea, which as a British person was very distressing, as I'm sure you can imagine. But immersion, it was the way. I mean, and I stayed there for 18 months. I traveled around. This is 20 years ago. The world has changed, unfortunately, and Russia is what it is. But people are people. And
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean about the joy of speaking in a language and speaking well. And they used to think I was Ukrainian because I make grammatical mistakes. Again, slightly racist to the Ukrainians, but never mind about that. But I could pass as a local.
Yes.
I don't think I could now, but I also, to be able to recreate that experience outside of the country, I think is really challenging. And that's why I love what you're doing, because actually you are creating that immersion without them having to go to the country. And everyone should travel.
Exactly.
Everyone should go to these countries, but you can't always. And
True.
so I love the fact that you're doing that. But I wanted to ask you, so it doesn't seem like coaching and program management is a natural bedfellow, but looking at your story, I feel there's a clear thread of helping people build structure and confidence and momentum. And did you see that pattern in yourself, or is that something that's become clear to you in hindsight?
It does, in hindsight, it certainly does, because from a young age, even when I was in middle school, the class would select me to be president of the class, for example. And, I actually dreaded it because I was already a firstborn. And as a firstborn, so many responsibilities already on my shoulder. I had to be the exemplary child. And so I was constantly elected as president of class. And when, they wouldn't listen to me, so I would on purpose not act as a president. So they would demote me to vice president. Then I'd be happy. I'd be like, yes, I get to be a kid. I support the president. But then that followed me throughout my career. Like even in college, I was made an assistant to the Faculty Student Association director. And then I managed the commodity store on campus. So I've always ended up in leadership roles where I'm coaching people, I'm helping people. And then actually, I have an engineering degree, which helps me in my business now because I'm able to build my own platform, in the way that I see fit instead of being limited and constrained to someone else's platform. But I'm also able to use my program management skills. And that's also why I ventured into program management, because I didn't want to be constrained to a computer all day. Like I missed the social interaction. I missed the business aspect. And so when recruiters came on campus, actually, I told them, I said, I know what my resume says, but I don't want to code all day. Is there like a happy place between? And, and I remember sitting there in talking to her thinking my dad would be so pissed at me if I actually said this to a recruiter, but I really don't want to be. I really don't want to be. Like, is there a role between coding and business? And she goes, you know what? We have this management training program. I think you'd be a good fit, because she said she looked at my extracurricular activities, because I was the relations chairperson of the Society of Women Engineers. I was commodity campus store manager. So she's like, I think you have the right leadership skills for this role. We'll put you into the management training program. And so it truly, when I think about, the story of my life, I don't want to say accidentally, maybe people just saw something in me and then gave me those opportunities and continued to, those opportunities continue to present themselves to me. And, I seize them, most of the time. Sometimes I don't. I do have, some regrets and opportunities that I let slip away just because I was scared. I was afraid, especially as women, we're not empowered to speak up. We're not, and if you do, you're shamed for it. So there are definitely opportunities that I let slip by me. But yeah, in the tone of helping people, building structure, building governance, that really helps me when I create that immersion around leaders, especially leaders who are used to establishing their authority, where I now get to tell them, no, don't do that. I need you to do A, B, C. Did you do your homework? Did you practice? You didn't follow the format. So it's actually fun for me, but also I get to leverage, that my experience in program management and governance to actually drill down into, the little steps that build up to this immersion experience that actually drives results. Yeah. So that's a great question. I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think, and it's you've talked about fear and stuff, but I actually think there's a lot of fear around language learning as well. And
Yes.
people worry about sounding stupid or being judged.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what, from your experience, what do you see going on, like, psychologically with your clients when they're struggling with these languages? Do they know that a lot of it's fear holding them back? Do you think, or is
They
there
do.
perfection? Right? Yeah.
They do, because sometimes it's self-inflicted, because, in their world, they know how they react, or they have those perceptions of someone else making mistakes, or someone else not being, eloquent. And so they have their own bias or their own judgments. And so now they're in that chair. And so they, they fear sounding the same. They fear judgment from others, especially as someone who's commanded rooms, right? And now they're fumbling, over their words. But I tell them, you have to be aware of the cultural difference. Yes, in the States, people mock you when you make mistakes, but that's not the same in France. In France,
Mm,
people, will actually correct you. And when they correct you, they don't do it in a demeaning way. They are so appreciative that you're making an effort. They want to help. And so they're never going to mock you, when you make a mistake. And so please feel free to make mistakes. Don't worry about, fumbling over your words, because it's just your own fear, preventing you from progressing, from moving forward. So I
mm,
want you to unlearn that, So I talk them through it. I want them to unlearn it and increase their awareness around the cultural gap, the mindset shift that needs to happen in order for them to be comfortable speaking French. Because yes, you will sound silly, but only for a moment, right? There are ways to recover, and nobody's going to be laughing at you. It's all self-inflicted. Don't be inside your head. Just assess the room. Just take the room in. Are people laughing at you? Are they mocking you? No. So continue to speak. It's okay. Those mistakes are not going to be forever. And I also like to take the example of Serena Williams, who in 2013, when she won, she did something unexpected. She, you know, did her victory speech in French. And she wasn't fluent, but she was able to be conversational. And
hmm.
actually, the crowd cheered her because, I
Yeah.
mean, they were so happy and proud that she did it in French. And now they have so much respect for her. It's like, okay, here, this athlete, this global athlete, who didn't need to learn our language, but she did, just to converse with us, to connect with us, on our level, in our language. So they respect that, So it's not about making mistakes. It's about, okay, are you connecting? What are you communicating?
Mm,
Right. And I love to take, for example, the example of I don't know if you heard that story, the Air Canada CEO, so there was a flight in LaGuardia, there was an accident, and a Quebec native lost his life. And, in Quebec, Montreal, they speak French, and they're very proud of that, right? And the Air Canada CEO did a 7 minute speech in English and only said 2 words in French. The Yeah,
Ooh.
exactly. So then the Montreal, Quebec was so upset that they actually pushed for his resignation. So
Wow.
he's actually resigning. He's actually, because it wasn't his first time. So they gave him a
Right.
warning before that he clearly did not take seriously, right? So, my point is the focus should be put on connecting, not on, your insecurities about making mistakes. Don't worry about that, because
Mm.
the crowd that you're connecting with, is more concerned about, is this leader representing us? Is he connecting with us? Does he care about connecting with us? And that's what matters.
I love that. Do you know what? I think there's a French stereotype, which I don't think is fair to all of France, because we have this idea that they'll be impatient with you or, dismiss you. And I'll tell you, like, my French is terrible. It's not my first or second language. And I know this, and I don't go there often enough to make it good. But every time I've gone, I always try to speak what I can. And I've always been met with welcomeness and appreciation. And the only time in like over 40 years of life that I remember a vaguely stereotypical French response was I was in Nice a few years ago, and for some reason the card reader had no signal outside, so she had to go into the cafe for the Wi-Fi. And I kept tapping
Okay.
my card and the Wi-Fi wasn't working, and somehow that was my fault. That's the only like stereotypical French response. The rest of the time, I tell you, I love France. I think it's a beautiful country and the language is wonderful. And as
Yeah.
someone who does not speak French well, I've only ever been met with kindness and appreciation. And to your other point, even in Russian, which I do speak well, or used to speak well, I remember I was teaching when I first graduated. I was a teacher, and I actually had a Russian student in my class, and he said, "Would you teach my parents English?" So I used to go around to his house, and his parents would feed me this wonderful Russian food. They were like both scientists working in hospital in Newcastle where I was living. And one
Okay.
time, instead of asking for the jam, I asked for the condoms. And I was mortified and they were just so kind about it, so,
Oh,
but, I still remember these, but the point being, people are people and
yeah.
people know when it's not your first language. Like you said, they
Yes.
appreciate the effort that you make.
Yes, they do appreciate it because, and to your point about, the French people, I get that a lot. People, they have this expectation of Paris, for example, like, oh my God, I'm going to Paris. I'm going to have a wonderful time. And they come back, oh my God, the French were rude to us. We had an awful time. And so I ask probing questions. Okay, so talk me through it. Like when you walked into a restaurant, talk me up through it. And I could tell by the way that they're describing the experience. They walked in, they didn't say bonjour. I was like, mistake number one. You walk into an establishment, you don't say bonjour, you're basically declaring war to the French people. Bonjour
Yeah.
equals respect over there, okay? But again, to knowing where you're going. For example, in Japan, when you step into an elevator, you don't speak. Silence is golden. Silence is respect. If you speak, that's actually disrespectful because it's such a close space. They consider your silence as respectful. So it's knowing where you're going, knowing the definition of respect to the nation that you're visiting, like to other people, right? Like don't take your own world and assume that it's global. Just open your horizons. Be curious. What matters to this culture that I want to experience? Be curious about it. So yeah, it makes a
Definitely.
difference.
And with your clients, when they break through, when they kind of get to that point, what sort of shift do you see in them when that happens?
So my favorite shift is watching them be more confident in the language and smiling and being excited about it
Mm.
because they can formulate sentences on their own. And so that is the greatest joy for me to watch them on screen, saying the sentences, with the right intonation, the right pronunciation, the right diction, and, watching them light up when they're able to, practice a negotiation session, for example, and, let's say do it 90%, in French without fumbling, and so to watch where they are at that point versus where they started, even for them, they're like, "Oh my God, Rachel, thank you so much." And then they tell me, I honestly doubted your 90-day thing. I was like, nah, I mean, I'm gonna try it, but there's no way, right? But they realize my method is not traditional because I'm not teaching you conjugation just for conjugation purpose, purpose.
Mm.
I'm coaching you. Like if you come to me and you say, I have a business negotiation that I want to handle in French, we tailor your learning around that. And there's no way you can't be fluent in that setting in 90 days because that's all we focus on. And so, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
I love that. You've been running Parlay for, I think, is it about over 8 years now? Is that right?
No, Parley actually just launched in January.
Oh, I got that wrong. Sorry.
January, yeah.
Um,
So I have coach clients before I actually
right,
formalized my company.
right, right.
Yes, yes. So I coach clients before I decided to, launch a
Turn it into
business
company.
and make it formal. Yeah.
So I guess my question is kind of still the same, which is how did that vision evolve to what it is today from where you were? And obviously, for me, that's opening the business up. But what was that process like for you to get to this company point?
I have to say I've made a lot of bad investments along the way because at first I wanted to rise up the ranks of corporate America. And I've invested, I want to say, at least $30,000 coaching. People who claim that they could get me into those roles because they will coach me on executive presence, on this and that, and how to, expand my network and connect with executives. And so at some point I realized, do I even want this? And that's how I went back to the book that I wrote about self-defined success. It's like, what do I really want? Let's say I get to that point in corporate America. Do I really want to continue dealing with those same problems, but just at a higher level, the same politics? So yeah, so I made quite a few bad investments along the way. And then I finally found this coach who is very successful in his own right. And he built this coaching program that was a great match for my ambition because I wanted to, like, I remember I actually made the decision in December, right around Christmas. I said, you know what? I want to launch my business next year and I want it to happen in a couple months. Like, who can help me? Who can I hire? Not somebody who's making promises and not delivering, but who can I hire to help me, launch it successfully from day one? Because the people that I talk to, the coaches that I talk to, they would say, oh, it took me like 2 years to launch my business. Oh, you have to be patient. I was like, it's a French coaching business. It doesn't need to take 2 years. And so I found this coaching company who gave me the tools I needed to actually launch it in January. But again, it wasn't a complete system where I was getting clients. So they helped me like set up the company. They helped me, with mindset to help me be successful and persist even when, I doubt myself. So like, when you wake up, what's your mindset? How are you setting the tone for the day, right? That was very instrumental. Mindset is everything. And so, yeah, that was my process. And at some point, I hired a marketing company to help me just put the word out there so that I could get more clients because those other clients that I had in the past, they were more organic. Like I met them through my work, right? And they would hear
Hmm.
me speak French and they'd be like, Rachel, you have to help me. They're sending me to friends to, like, for example, this sales executive was like, I have to close this deal and I don't even speak a lick of French. And I was like, well, why don't you guys hire me? Just hire me and I'll translate for you. And they were like, no, it's not in the budget. And so the sales exec would hire me out of his own pocket to coach him. And so I thought, those were organic. But now, how do I put myself in front of more of these people who need my help? And so, hiring this marketing company, to put the word out there. So it was a lot of hit or miss, a lot of bad investments. Also, I'm learning how to stop using my own resources and leverage other resources
Hmm.
because otherwise you're just jeopardizing your own financial security when there are resources out there to help you succeed. So it's been quite a learning process, but I have to say my dedication, like I stay awake at midnight, 1 a.m., which is another thing that I enjoy about your podcast when you talk about, you did talk about, are you awake at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., your
Oh
mind
yeah.
is racing? That's me. Yeah, that's me. I'm like, I need to polish my email signature. It's not professional. And then literally last night, I was up at 1 a.m. polishing this beautiful email signature.
We need to talk about that one later after this session. Stop doing
Okay.
that.
Okay. All right. Yes. Um, so yeah, so man, it's a whole process. Plus, I'm a solopreneur. So it gets very scary at times because I'm like, who can I trust by my side? Like even when you hire
Mm,
an intern, when you hire, a team, you're like, how can I make the best decision? Especially as a Black woman, you're like, who can I trust to have my back, to
mm,
support me, to see my vision and also want to succeed with me. So it's very hard. It's a lot of hit or miss. But when you persist, when you put your goal into the universe, when you stay focused on your vision, the universe really meets you back. It gives you the energy that you put out into the universe. You really get it back tenfold. And I have to say, so far so good.
It's wonderful. I want to acknowledge your honesty, though, right? Because I think in entrepreneurship, there are a lot of people who make a lot of promises who don't deliver.
Yes.
And I think we all know this, but we don't all own up to the fact that we've paid money for things that have never come through. And I think that's an important conversation to have.
Yes.
I've had coaches who just haven't delivered as well. I'm not saying the coaching industry is a big, massive con. I don't think it is. But I think the coaching industry itself can sell a promise, an aspirational idea that anyone thinks they can do, but it's never that straightforward. And one thing my dad said to me when I was little was everything costs longer and everything costs more and takes longer. And that's the one thing I have learned. But to your point, not everything has to take longer. And I think if you've got that clear vision, that clear drive, and the passion that you have, why can't you start your business tomorrow?
Exactly. There have been coaches out there for decades. So if it took you a decade and you've learned from it, just coach me on how to do it in like a year or in 6 months, in 2 months. I don't need to spend a decade. You've already learned it, and you can capitalize on that. You can, and that's what I loved about my coach. She was like, it actually took me 10 years to learn this, but I'm going to teach you how to do it in 2 months. Or in 3 months. And so he said he made a lot of mistakes. He invested a lot of money, but, he was able to package this and it worked, So it's really a hit or miss. Sometimes you hear those claims, even for my claim, speak conversational for 90 days. I'm sure a lot of people are there like, she's just another one of those coaches. I'm sure there are a lot of people like that. But what they have to understand is that my method is different. I don't teach traditional methods. I really center it around your specific goal. I'm not teaching you how to be conversational in French as a whole or how to be completely fluent in French. No, of course, that's impossible. But if you have a specific goal, you're like, I have a business negotiation, I will get you fluent in that business negotiation in 90 days. Yeah, that's really it. But yes, I think a lot of people should talk about, because I know a couple of leaders and entrepreneurs who have shared the same with me, that they've lost $5,000 here, $10,000 there, because they bought into this idea, and now it makes them skeptical, to sign up with. Because you also has this, like on LinkedIn, for example, the minute you put founder on your title, you get flooded with all those offers. Rachel, I want to do this for you. Rachel, I want to do that for you. It's like, oh my God, excuse me, I just started in the industry. Stop. I don't have $1 billion sitting around to
they don't even read what you actually do, though. I get stuff about coaching and I'm like, I'm not actually a coach. I'm like a clinical hypnotherapist. Like, at least read my profile, people.
Exactly. Read my profile, interact with my posts, be valuable first before asking me for things. Add value, and then perhaps I will pay attention to you. Yeah.
But again, another thing with you, and I think the thing you said about your coach, having the experience packaging it up. Again, with the coaching industry, I think there is this belief that anybody can coach because you don't have to have the lived experience. But I do think, and there are unicorns, there are people who can just get it. But I do think when it comes to coaching, you want someone who has lived it, who has done it. And again, with you, that's very true, because you have done it. You have done it for English, you've done it for French. You have put yourself in that position. So you have pedigree and you have proof there. And I think that's the distinction we need to make when we're talking about whatever the coach is. Have they lived this? You definitely have. And that's what you need to look out for.
Yes, that's a very good point, because a lot of coaches haven't lived it. They just identify the need and they think they have the solution until they realize after the clients have already paid, a boatload of money, that, oh my God, this actually didn't work for this client, But having lived it truly puts you in a position to really understand what it takes to support people, in with the same need. Yeah, for sure.
Now, you have written a book, maybe more than one book, actually. Just the one book, wasn't it?
Yes, one book so far.
What inspired that, and what is it about?
So it stemmed from my disappointment and also feeling very lonely at times because of my choices in life when it comes to success. And I was raised this way by my dad, where, for example, an example that I like to use a lot is I remember when the light bulb went out in my bedroom, and I said, "Dad, the light bulb went out in my bedroom," and he goes, "And?" So when you're a young woman living in your apartment, are you going to allow men to take advantage of you just because you couldn't change your own light bulb? No, you have two hands, you have a brain, you've seen me do it, so go ahead and do it. Don't burn yourself. You can do it. And so I was raised by this father, like, who saw me, for example, spend too much time in the kitchen, and he was like, I don't really want to raise my daughter to be domestic. I also want you to be, yes, it's good for you to know how to cook. And my dad knew how to cook, but he rarely did because we grew up in this society where men did not belong in the kitchen. But my dad was a I mean, when he made a dish, and to this day, I regret not insisting that he, cook more because it was so delicious. But anyway, I digress. So I was raised to be this independent woman. And so because of that, there are some fundamental traditional rules in society, especially when it comes to dating and marriage, that I don't necessarily subscribe to, even though I am a Christian woman and I do have strong Christian values. But my mother once told me that she doesn't consider me successful because I don't have a husband and a kid. And I
Right.
said, I'm
Okay.
going to write a book and I'm going to say that you said that to me. And and she looked at me and was like, yep, I'm going to tell the world that my own mother said that to me. That was wildly disrespectful. And I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that there are people like you who, no matter what we accomplish in this world, if we're not using our uterus, if we're not, cooking, cleaning after somebody, then we're not valuable as women. And that is
Mm,
the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, because I grew up right in front of your eyes. You saw your husband raising me to not be that kind of woman. So you're just, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. And so that's really what gave me the idea to write the book. It's because I'm also the only woman in my family who have chosen this path, where I'm like, I don't know if marriage is for me. I don't know if children are for me, even though I love, love, love my nephew to death. My sister gave birth to, a boy and a girl. And oh, I mean, yeah, I'm like helicopter auntie, but I still don't know if I want my own, right?
yeah.
And I think that's allowed. It is allowed. It's okay. I look up to people like Tracy Ellis Ross, who was in the same shoes. I look up to people like Oprah Winfrey, who was proposed to 4 times by her partner. And she's like, I don't know if I'd be a good wife to you. I can be a good partner, a good girlfriend, but
Mm,
my love is my business. And I think that's okay. And so giving ourselves permission to define success for ourselves. And also because I was assaulted sexually, a couple times throughout my life, and having a niece now is the only reason why I honestly speak about it, because I want her to know that if it happens to her, she needs to speak up, and that there will
mm,
be people who will believe her, because a lot of women don't come forward because they know that they won't be believed, or they've watched other women having to relive it 100 times, having to explain themselves, defend why they didn't scream, why they didn't do this, why they did do that. And so to avoid all that, they don't come forward. But I want to be vocal about it because I know that 1 in 4 women experience this. And I want her to never believe anyone who tells her, if you speak up, your parents are going to be upset, or nobody's going to believe you. No, you have a voice, you have power, you have a support system. And so I wish more women will come forward, because, otherwise we just lose power and we lose our voice. And so it's all of this that prompted me to write the book and defining success for myself and speaking up about, things that are very common amongst us women that we experience, but lose our voice. And so, yeah.
I mean, I love it. It's funny. I was talking the weekend to a very dear friend of mine. We went for a wander along the river where we live. She's in her 60s and she's just recently got divorced and she started a new relationship. And she was saying, I don't know why I, as an independent woman, I've businesswoman, I've raised children. There are times, even with my new partner, that I will just agree with him, even though I don't agree with him. And even as an independent, strong-minded, intelligent woman,
Yes.
and I think I do the same, and I do program management in my day job, and people look to me for decisions, and I've served in the army, I've done all these things, but there are times where I'll just still revert to being this almost subservient female. And I
Yes,
said it's
yes,
social conditioning and it's subconscious
yes,
for most of us. And I think it's
yeah,
changing because people like the book you're writing.
yeah,
But it's not even just from men, it is from other women sometimes who
yeah,
also have this social conditioning. And
yeah.
there is a weird dichotomy that exists where you can, in the case of your mum, you can watch your daughter being brought up, to be this intelligent, independent, capable, amazing woman and still go, but you haven't got married and have kids. And you're like, how does that work? But it's the social conditioning that we have
Yes,
had as
true.
women. And so I love that you wrote the book and I love that you're challenging that. And I think there should come a time where we don't have to justify these decisions, but we
Thank you.
definitely do
Yeah.
now. And I remember when
Yes.
I got married, people would give me baby stuff. And I'm like, you're like, I don't know that I want to have kids and I don't have kids. And actually, I have endometriosis. So having kids isn't straightforward, even if I wanted them. But the
Yeah, yeah.
assumption was now you are married, you must need to have children. I said,
Right.
well, is that right? Even so, and marriage or not marriage, the assumption is as a woman you are incomplete without a child, and
Exactly.
it's just so wrong. It is so
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah. And I'm honestly grateful for women like, Jane Fonda, Gloria
Mm.
Steinem, women who have actually paved the way. Even though Jen was married a few times, but now she's like, ah,
It's,
I don't know if I would have done it again.
I wouldn't do it
She's like,
again.
yeah, yeah. And I've married like very prominent men, but I don't know, ladies, just define what makes you happy, so
Yeah.
I love that women like these have given me permission. But you're so right. Even though I'm talking about defining success for your own, but that's what drives me to do that is because I have been the woman who, yeah, even though I didn't agree with something, I went along with it. And then
Mm.
I would spend years beating myself up. Why did I do that? Because I didn't even agree to it. So why did I do it? But it's
Yeah.
social conditioning. It's society. Yeah.
I mean, I see changes, but I also, I'm sure you see this more in the US, but the pushback against the changes as well. So for every
Yes.
step that we take forward,
Yes.
there is like
We take
10
10
paces
step back.
back.
Yeah.
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 So it's
Yeah.
going to take time, but the more conversations like this we have, I have hope for the
Exactly.
world.
Me too. Me too. Me too. I do have strong hope for the world. I think that, yes, it's taking us time to get there. Yes, like you said, would go back 50 years, on certain topics and decisions, but we'll get there. I think we'll get
We
there.
will.
Yeah.
So going back to sort of you and your business, now we've solved all the
Yes.
world problems. What would you say to someone like you who has this deep passion to do something differently? And maybe they are in the corporate world currently. What is there anything you'd recommend they do to get ready to take that leap? How would you sort of encourage them to move forward?
I would encourage them to surround themselves with like-minded people. I would encourage them to not be afraid to distance just because yes, it gets lonely as you do it, but only for a period of time because you will get those voices around you who will tell you you're fantasizing, you need to stop fantasizing. You need to stop your dreaming because I've had that. I've had people telling me stop fantasizing. And my life today is a fantasy that I had mentioned, like, let's say just 3, 4 years ago, someone told me to stop
Mm.
fantasizing and I'm living it today. And that was even before starting my business. And so now that I'm starting my business, someone else had told me, oh my God, you're coaching French. You're going to be bored. I'm like, it's not traditional French. I'm not a tutor, right? So it's
Hmm.
like when you just listen to your gut, just make sure you have a unique value proposition, identify what that is. And if it's aligned with your values, if you know in your soul that this is what you're meant to be, just trust it. Don't listen to the outside noise because a lot of people will also feel they would watch your transformation and feel like you're leaving them behind. And so they will try to hold on to you for dear life. Don't let that happen because you can always you your circles are going to look different. It's not like you have to sever those relationships, but you may have to distance yourself for a little while until you get to where you belong. And then you can reassess those relationships. Are they happy for me? Can I still have them around me? Because, your path is yours. Nobody else gets to define it. Nobody else gets to tell you what your tolerance threshold should be, what your standards should be. It is yours. That's why you have your own name. When you're born, you're not called everyone. You have a specific name, right? So you follow your own path. So that's what I would recommend to someone who is in my position, who feels like, there's something wrong with where they are, they're unhappy at work every day, in and out. And you know what I read recently? That 71% of professionals are always looking for a career change. That says something. That says
Mm-hmm.
something. It's like we live in this era where more people are stepping away from corporate world, from the traditional work settings. And so listen to your gut, listen to that shift, tune into society, what's going on around you, find your tribe, because it is out there. If you don't find it right away, you can build it, build your tribe, connect with people who are happy for you, who can support you, and vice versa. Of course, you have to, give it back. But that would my strongest recommendation is to just listen to that voice, because you don't want to be 60, 70, 80, and you're like, man, I can't believe I never took that leap. Maybe my life would have been better. You don't want to live with that regret. And we all have regrets, but there's certain regrets that are avoidable.
I love that. And talk about connection. It's been wonderful talking with you. How can people find
Same.
you, use your services if they want to stay in touch and learn more?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Pierre, my name Rachel Pierre on LinkedIn. You can find me there. You can connect with me on Instagram, Rachel's French Method on Instagram. You can also find me through my website, parleymethod.com. So there's a button to connect with me there. Yeah, those few
Amazing.
ways.
Please go and check out Rachel. French or no, I think
Thank you.
the book is fantastic. I think everything needs to be out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes, definitely check out the book. I think it'll be revolutionary for you, for sure. To my list, to your listeners. But
Definitely.
yeah, this was amazing, Philippa. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation. I love your question. I'm so happy I reached out to you. Yeah,
I
you're
am
doing great
too.
work.
Thank you. Thank you.